What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I will be reviewing Black Widow. So Black Widow was directed by Cate Shortland, and it stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, Rachel Weisz, and David Harbour. And it tells the story of Natasha Romanoff, also known as Black Widow, who must confront the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy tied to her past arises. This is actually the first Marvel film I've ever reviewed on my channel as of this review, and you might be wondering, why haven't I ever reviewed a Marvel movie? Well, here's the thing. I am a fan of the MCU, kinda, but I'm pretty sure there are a couple of them that I still haven't yet seen. I know I haven't seen Thor: The Dark World, though I think I'm just not going to ever watch that film anyway. But I have seen the majority of them, and I like them for the most part. I like Avengers, I kind of liked Age of Ultron, I like Infinity War, I really liked Endgame, Black Panther, the first Iron Man, I even like the new Spider-Man films, but I'm not like a massive diehard fan of the MCU. I completely understand why some people hate it, and I also understand why some people love it. One of my favorite parts of the MCU has been the character of Natasha Romanoff, or Black Widow. I think she's a very underappreciated character, and I do know her backstory. I've looked into her backstory in some of the comics. I was really looking forward to this movie, and I was positive that Marvel was going to do the character justice, especially after, spoilers, her death in Endgame. And unfortunately, I was very disappointed in this movie. It doesn't even really feel like a Black Widow movie. Like, it's called Black Widow, and it was advertised as her story, the story of Natasha Romanoff. But she feels very much like she's on the sidelines. The least interesting character in Black Widow was Black Widow. What? It's also a very convoluted story, and there is a lot of expositional dialogue. Thankfully, a good portion of it is played for comedy, so it kind of makes it more bearable, but there are a couple scenes where characters are like, okay, so this is happening, and this is also happening, and we have to do this to stop this from happening, because if that happens, this is also going to happen, but don't forget about that thing from your past that's coming back into play in this movie that you also have to deal with, and you have to deal with that, because if that happens, then that's going to happen, and if that happens, then that's going to affect this, which will affect that, which will cause this to happen. I just annoyed the crap out of myself saying that for, 15 seconds? This movie feels extremely convoluted, and it is a very messy script. And there's not really much of a directorial vision. That's not to say that the directing is bad. I do think Cate Shortland, for the most part, did a decent job. But unfortunately, a lot of the action sequences in the film, none of them are really memorable. I would say maybe the finale action sequence is the only thing that I kind of have a couple visuals of stuck in my mind, but other than that, it all just feels very cookie-cutter, bland action that you've seen 1,000 times. Previous MCU films have done a much better job with action. And as I was watching it, I kept on noticing hints of what this movie could have been. Because there are, don't get me wrong, I didn't outright hate this film. There are a few moments, like a handful of moments in this film that actually I kind of leaned forward in my seat. I was like, oh, okay, and then it just went back to the bland stuff. But there are hints of a good movie in here. There are some really good elements to it. Scarlett Johansson is great as this character, and she will always be great as this character. In fact, everyone in the film is doing a really good job. It's just that the script isn't really giving them much to explore emotionally. It all just really feels like comedy, expositional dialogue, and bland action sequences. Which, some people who don't really like the MCU, that's how they would describe pretty much the entire MCU anyway. So this might be the film that might get MCU fans to understand how non-MCU fans have kind of viewed the MCU for the last 10, 11, 12 years. And honestly, the best part of the movie is the comedy, and my favorite character in the film is actually Florence Pugh's character. I really loved this character. She was so funny, and Florence Pugh's performance was magnificent. I want to see more of this character, and she's so funny, and she has this great running gag about how she makes fun of, the over-the-top superhero poses that Natasha does when she's in battle, and then later in the movie when Florence Pugh has to go into battle, she does that exact pose, and she's like, I was just making fun of this earlier. It was a nice running gag, and, not just that, she's funny throughout the entire film. The comedy in the film works well. The dynamic between the characters works when it's played for comedic effect. It's not like everything about the movie didn't work. As I said, the dynamics between the characters are good. There were a couple times where I did kind of almost feel something, and visually, it's not a complete disaster, despite the action being very bland. And as with every Marvel movie, there is a post-credit scene, and I am very not happy to say that this might be the stupidest post-credit scene of any Marvel movie that I've ever seen. Seriously, when the post-credit scene of this movie ended, I almost laughed out loud because of how stupid it was. I was like, what? Why? That doesn't, you haven't even been teasing, like, why did that even, that doesn't make any sense, which is another thing. It's not like that was just a gut reaction. Logically, it actually doesn't make sense. Like, it sets up an arc for the next film that they will inevitably make in this franchise. But it doesn't make sense, and the motivation that they give to it doesn't logically make sense either. I don't want to spoil anything, but you'll get what I'm saying when you watch the movie. I really liked the opening scene of the movie, and I liked the opening credits too. They had a really, honestly, really cool cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit play over the opening credits, and the opening scene of the film, you kind of get Natasha's childhood a little bit and what happened with her family, which is kind of what I wanted the whole movie to be. In my opinion, they didn't do a great job marketing this. The trailer certainly got me excited, but I was expecting an origin movie for some reason, or at least a movie that heavily focused on the origin story. And the film deals with the backstory, but the majority of it takes place after all of that much more interesting stuff already happened. The origin story is rushed in like the first 10 minutes, credits, title card, and then we're set in the time between Infinity War and Endgame. And so it just feels like such a missed opportunity, because Black Widow's backstory is so intriguing, but they just rush through it in those first 10 minutes. It's not bad, but it's not good either. And I wouldn't call it okay, and I wouldn't call it kind of bad. It's just kind of meh. They made a Black Widow movie, I guess. All of that being said, though, I did find the film watchable. You know, there wasn't really many moments where I was bored, because the comedy and the character dynamics, those are the glue that really holds the film together. If that stuff hadn't been well done, then the entire movie would have fallen apart, and I would be giving this like a D-, something like that. It doesn't feel like they wanted to tell this story. It just feels like another thing for the IP, and just to set up more movies. Which is so disappointing, because this character deserves way, way more than that. I'm sure common audiences are going to enjoy this film for the comedy and seeing these actors that they love portray these likable characters, and because of the fact that the action is fairly consistent, but for me, especially as a big fan of the Black Widow character and someone who is very much looking forward to seeing the character done justice on the big screen, I couldn't help but be very let down. So let's go ahead and grade this thing. I'm going to give Black Widow a C-. Look forward to my upcoming review of Ex Machina. That'll be coming very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.